It's a real privilege to be back in Lansing. I'm so pleased to be together with all of you. I came here in my mid-20s back in 1995 with passion for the sports business. I had done a few scrappy jobs, really small clubs, really small towns, had a great time, and I was so fortunate to get a call to come to Lansing and be part of the startup. I enjoyed 4 amazing years here. For our family, we had our daughter at Sparrow, our youngest, 2 sons at Pinecrest Elementary, so many friends that we built here, an amazing time. And then professionally, it was really for me a transformative experience. I'm looking for the clicker here. Do I have it? There it is. It was a transformative experience for me professionally, and I think what I did in Lansing has really set the foundation for all the challenges that I've taken on since. I found this photo of Governor Engler, Mayor Hollister, and Tom Dixon with their shovels in the ground sometime in '95. That's about when I arrived, and that's our team from 1996, the first season. Oh, before you remember that, Tom Murphy? They did, yeah. That was one of the highlights of the first year was the boys from Latin America who had literally never seen snow before, and we were worried about getting the game in because it was snowing in April. I've also had the privilege to be here at the Economic Club, so I'm so grateful to be speaking. I think I did my first in the fall of '95, and on from there. One of the ones I vividly remember is there's a guy named Tom Wilson. Tom's the president of Olympia Sports, the Red Wings, and at the time he was president of the Detroit Pistons. And so he was speaking up here the same day that the OJ verdict came down. Does anybody else remember that day? Hilarious. And anyway, he came up with, so like literally somebody came in the back door and Tom was 10 minutes in and he said, "We've got the verdict." And so he stopped and we heard the verdict, and then somehow he carried on and said, well, something like, "I think we all agree," and I since learned Tom became a client, one of my club clients when I was at the NBA, and this is Tom's sense of humor. But anyway, I'm delighted to be here with you at the Lansing Economic Club. Abu Dhabi that was making a lot of noise up the road in Manchester. And I was fortunate. I got a call from a headhunter, and he said, "Would you be interested in talking about a role at Manchester City?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely." And the short story is that after a number of interviews, I was offered a position as chief operating officer there. And before I went, we signed the contract, and we got it all announced. Or we didn't get it announced. We were ready to announce it, but we weren't going to announce until June, and I wasn't going to start until August. And in the meantime, they had a really big game. This is the 2011-12 season, and they were battling neck and neck with our rivals, Manchester United, to see who was going to win the title. And so I was sitting on my couch for the last game, and all we had to do, we went into the game even on points, but ahead on goal difference by a lot. So all we had to do was equal their result for the day. If they lose, we can lose. If they draw, we can draw. If they win, we have to win. And what's interesting about the last day of the Premier League is everybody kicks off at the same time, so there's no advantages. 3 o'clock, everybody kicks off, bang, there you go. And so this, what ended up happening was a very tense day. Manchester City scored first. They then gave up 2 goals, and Manchester United across the country was winning, and so we were in the process of losing the title, which they hadn't won in almost 40 years. And I was trying to rationalize on my sofa in Derby that it would be a good idea to have some room for improvement from second to first place in the next year. But this is what happened after 1 goal in extra time. This is what happened.
And that Rooney goal was enough for the 3 points. Manchester City are still alive here. Balotelli, Aguero! I swear you'll never see anything like this ever again. So watch it, drink it in. They've just heard the news at the Stadium of Light. 2 goals in added time for Manchester City to snatch the title away from Manchester United. Stupendous!
The greatest moment I've seen in Premier League football. Unbelievable!
So you can imagine, this was. I also grew up in Boston, so it didn't take as long. But you have grandparents, Red Sox grandparents, who had never seen the team win, and you had the same thing going on here. And plus the emotions in that stadium. I talked to all of my colleagues now, and the fans were, they were like down at the floor, full time. They knew that United was winning, and they were out. They had to score 2 goals in the injury time, and then it went just through the roof. One of the amazing moments. What was also fun is that there was more injury time. There was less injury time in Sunderland, where Man United played, so they finished 2 minutes earlier, thought they had won the league, and were celebrating on the pitch. And then the word came out that there was another goal at the Etihad Stadium, so it's good fun. Yeah. Anyway, so let me tell you. So Manchester City. What was interesting about Manchester City is I arrived, and on the first day, the whole idea was about it was no longer going to be one club. So the idea was we're going to have multiple clubs, and we're going to create this group. Then we're going to change what's possible in the sport of soccer. Not my idea. It was Ferran Soriano's idea. I'll tell you a little bit about him in a minute. But essentially, let's just change the game. We think this is how we win more games, get the most players, have the best ecosystem for fans, how we do the most for partners, and give back the most to cities. And so right away we did that. And we were in Manhattan the first month on the job, talking to the commissioner for Major League Soccer about getting the rights for New York. So along the way and since, we have clubs in New York. If I go left to right here, Manchester, the original. New York, 3 years old now. This is a team that we own 80%. We have a local investor. We wanted a strong local investor in New York, which is the New York Yankees. So it turned out that we found a very strong local investor. And it was one of the things that was interesting is the Steinbrenner family are actually big soccer fans, which was great. And that team plays its games at Yankee Stadium right now, but we'll build a new stadium. We have one in Melbourne, Australia, a great sports country and sports city of Melbourne. We've had that also for 3 years. The next is Yokohama, Japan. This is a team that we co-own with the Nissan Motor Company. This is their home, And they approached us when they saw that we were doing this, and they said, we have this team, we don't think we run it very well, could you help us? And so we took 20% of that, and we help run that club. And I go to Japan once a quarter, which is lovely, and the city of Yokohama is fantastic. The last two are almost brand new in terms of acquisitions. One is in Uruguay, in Montevideo, a team called Torque FC, which literally means like torque on a ball. This is a brand new club. If we get it up to the top division, we may rename it Montevideo City, because part of the idea here is that we have city brands. But this is a country of 3 million people that has won 18 major championships, including 3 World Cups, and they're consistently in the quarterfinals, semifinals, amazing hotbed of talent within South America, and we also use it as a place to land other players. And then the far right is a club called Girona, which is a lovely place to visit. If you're a Game of Thrones fan, there's a lot of stuff that's shot there. It's an hour up the road from Barcelona on the Costa Brava, and they now have a team in the top division in Spain, and we've just bought half of this club as they were getting promoted, and this gives us another place to develop our players. So this is our group of clubs. On the left, you'll see 2 companies, City Football Services and City Football Marketing. These companies deliver service to each of these clubs, so we're now operating a matrix, which if you work at PepsiCo or if you work with Nike, you're familiar with this. I was not at all familiar with this in sport, but we now operate on a matrix, and it works pretty well. But football services is our IP, how we coach, how we play, how we develop talent, how we recruit, human performance. And then City Football Marketing is all the sales and marketing suite, so everything about fan growth, brand, and revenue for all of our clubs. And we operate those out of Manchester and London, and then we have 8 offices around the world, Singapore, Tokyo, Shanghai, Melbourne, Abu Dhabi for Middle East and North Africa, and New York, and hope to open up on the West Coast soon. And then we're owned, the ownership is great, so it's Abu Dhabi, it's effectively sovereign wealth, and they were 100%, but we had a group from China that wanted to buy into the group, and this is a company called China Media Capital. They lead the consortium. And so this is a company that invests in sports media and entertainment in China. So they are News Corp, Warner Brothers, DreamWorks, Cirque du Soleil, Lego for Legoland, and they invested in us for soccer, which is great because I'm going to tell you about China in a minute, but it's a bit opaque, so you need to have a good partner holding your hand and getting you into the right places and telling you what's real and what's not. So these are our clubs around the world. It's totally a global existence. I spend a lot of my time out on the field. I spend a week a month in Asia and a week a month in North America, based out of Manchester. And then our team is also as much about women's football as it is about men's. So right now we have the 6 men's clubs, and we have 2 women's clubs in Manchester and Melbourne. These clubs win everything. The women's clubs, but this is such an important part for us because obviously it's half the population, half of the potential football fans, but the rest of the world has been developing slower than what we're used to in terms of girls and women's soccer in the United States, and we're helping to catch it up, and it's really fun to be a part of that. We're also in the business of building things. So these are 3 pictures of City Football Academy. The stadium's in the upper left-hand corner. That's a 13-year-old stadium. This other patch is 80 acres, and this is the home of our first team and our academy. There's 400 players who call this their home, 16 pitches, a second stadium where our women and our under-21s play, and the building in the middle has actually 2 full-size soccer pitches, one indoor, one outdoor, that sit within it. And if you've been to England and followed the NFL there, or maybe soccer over there, that building in the middle is as big as Wembley Stadium, which is where we have all our classrooms and residences and changing rooms for the first team in the academy. This is probably the best training ground in the world of soccer, and is the epicenter for what we do. We've gone on to build smaller ones. There's the second stadium. We've built smaller ones in Melbourne. There's Melbourne, some similarities. And we're in the process of building one in New York, just across the George Washington Bridge from Manhattan. And this will open up in March for our team, which currently trains at the State University of New York. We've also been building on our stadium, so we've expanded 8,000 seats, the Etihad Stadium, opened it up 2 years ago, and have done all the bells and whistles that you expect in all of the great U.S. stadiums from hospitality and great experiences. We can get access to see the players. We've just done a tunnel club where the players literally are walking in to go to work through our fans and out to the pitch through our fans, and doing all their media interviews, which is fantastic. And we've totally stolen from the Dallas Cowboys and others, unashamedly. In addition to running clubs, and when people saw that we were looking at doing clubs, they called us about all sorts of other businesses. Do you want to buy a basketball team? Would you like to buy a baseball team? How about hockey? How about drone racing? How about esports, League of Legends, if any of you are gamers and play, all of these things. And we said, you know what, we're going to stick with soccer because it's a huge space. It's the world's biggest and favorite sport. We've got 450 million followers around the world, and we're going to stick with that. But that's led us to other interesting investments like this one, which we did in July. This is a company called Goals. It's a five-a-side soccer business, and this is a site in Pomona, suburban Los Angeles. And this is a 3-acre site that people, adults and kids and families rent after work and on weekends to play soccer in leagues and coaching. Very profitable business, but it's authentic to also growing the game in the United States, helping people learn it, understand it, enjoy it. And so it's a great business, and we think it has huge scale potential. I think here in Lansing there's something called the soccer zones that would, if you've been out there, there's some similarities to this business. And this business is also portable to places like China, which has got a huge focus on soccer. The purpose of our group is maybe the main thing, and that is we're using the power of football, of sport, in our case football, soccer, to empower people to lead better lives. So we definitely want to win trophies. We definitely want to drive revenue so we can invest in more players and build better stadia and training grounds. But the real purpose of what we do is to use the power of football to help people lead better lives. And we do that locally with all of our clubs, and we also do it with this program, Citizens Giving, which has 12 programs around the world. We put money in from our overall revenue, and we have programs that use soccer in urban areas, so taking the brand city literally, and we solve different problems and programs delivered by young leaders in these urban areas. So some where we have clubs are easy, like New York, Manchester, Melbourne, but we're in, as you see, in Beijing, we're in Johannesburg, we're in Mexico City, we're in Jakarta, Indonesia, and many other places doing different programs. And the neat thing about this is that it's all kids, it's all football, but our fans decide where the money goes. And so this is our manager, Pep Guardiola. If you're a soccer fan, you'll know who Pep is. Pep is like the Tom Izzo of the soccer world. So he's the best manager going in the game, in the world. And this is Pep deciding where he's going to place his money. Which brings me on to China. China, there are two markets in the world right now, the United States and China, that have the most exciting future in soccer. And I'm going to do the US at the end, but briefly on China. These are our guys last summer on the Great Wall outside of Beijing. But China has decided that soccer is the most important sport for it right now, that it's not good enough, that it needs to improve. It's like the Olympics and performance. It's like a common language and a common currency and a measuring stick. They want to host, play in, and win the World Cup, by like 2036. Whenever they decide to host it, they'll get it, that's for sure. And when they get it, you're allowed to play in it, but they're going to wait a little bit because they want to make sure that their team is better. This is the president in the red tie, Xi Jinping, 2 years ago, October, at our training ground, City Football Academy, that we just looked at, along with the former Prime Minister of England, David Cameron, and our chairman, Khaldoon al-Mubarak. And so he paid us a visit, and we did a lot of great stuff. You can imagine for a visit like this, we had like 6 advanced visits by Chinese security. Our security tends to be a little anal retentive as well, and we almost got into fights between the two, but my point is that this was like the most programmed visit you could ever imagine, and it all went really, really well, and it was a huge coup to get him there. But one of the best things that happened was unscripted, which is our striker, Sergio Aguero. You saw him score that goal in the Premier League. Just decided as he was meeting them that he'd like to take a selfie, so he asked Xi Jinping and Cameron to zoom in for a selfie. And this is the best thing that happened because it went viral worldwide. It was on the front of the FT, the front of the Wall Street Journal, and really, really good. So now lots of Chinese want to come to Manchester to walk in the footsteps of Xi Jinping, which is great for us. But we're there in China now because they're putting a huge holistic effort behind the sport. Every boy and girl has to learn how to play. Every PE teacher has to spend 25% of their time learning how to coach the sport. They want to build more facilities. He said to us on the visit, he said, "This is amazing. We really like this. We need your help in building some of these in China." And we said, "Oh, okay. Well, we're happy to help. You know, how many did you have in mind?" And he said, 20,000. And he was serious. And so like every business, every province, every city is being told to get behind it. So we're spending a lot of time, and I'm spending a lot of time in China now trying to keep up. We also, going back to women's football, this is Carly Lloyd. Anybody know who Carly Lloyd is? Two-time footballer of the year, women's footballer of the year, Ballon d'Or winner. That's her scoring one of her 3 goals in the World Cup a couple years ago and celebrating that goal. And here is her for Manchester City. So we signed her this last spring, which was a lot of fun to come and to help our team. I was excited about the marketing opportunity, but we were as excited about having her as a professional. Amazing work ethic, amazing mentor to the other ladies in the team. And we won as well. So the team has been doing really well, and this is her lifting the FA Cup at Wembley back in April. So it's been fun to have Carly with us, and she'll now continue to be an ambassador for us. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we're doing now. I've been really fortunate to work with some amazing people, amazing upline and mentors along the way. And I thought I would just share a few things from a few of them. So back to this guy. So David Stern. I didn't know David until I worked there, and I was always impressed with him on television. He's one of the smartest guys, and is happy to tell you how smart he is, of course. And he's also one of the toughest guys. But he loved us because our department was all about what's going on at the clubs. So I think on a certain level it was like an intelligence gathering exercise for David. It was definitely about pushing up the performance of all the clubs. The lessons, I learned a couple lessons from David, one of which is, actually before I do that, let me tell you about my first meeting with David, because he's a really tough guy. And so I met him at a league event just for a quick hello, and then I had my first real meeting with him on Fifth Avenue, and I was sent in alone into his boardroom, which kind of overlooks Rockefeller Center and St. Patrick's, right on the corner there at 51st and 5th. And so he has a conference room off the side of his office, and I went and I was sitting in the conference room and waiting, and I had gone in the side door, or the real door, and I thought he was going to come in the same door, so I'm kind of focused and waiting and looking, and then bang, he comes in, of course, over here. And I'm sitting twiddling my thumbs, and he comes in, and I'm sitting, he's standing, and he says, "Tom Glick, what on earth," he actually didn't say what on earth, it was a little bit more colorful than that, "is a guy from minor league baseball going to teach the CEO of an NBA team?" This is his opening line. I'm like, "Oh, thank you." Yeah. And I said, "David, the minor league teams that I've been running for the last 10 years are better run than at least half of your teams." And he's like, I don't know where that came from. And he said, all right. Let's go. So he was a really tough guy, and a lot of the league is deadly afraid of getting trapped with him. But the things that I remember about David are his homework. So not only was he the smartest guy in the room, I think naturally, but he worked and worked and worked. And occasionally I would fly with him to events, and I was impressed. He would come in with a stack of newspapers from all around the country and around the world, and magazines for the day, and he would go through all of them. On a trip to Detroit, a 90-minute flight from Westchester to Detroit, he would go through all of it, pick out the highlights, and then he'd want to talk about what's going on with the club. So an amazing work ethic, and also just a real endurance as well. One of the things that I would do when I traveled with him is I would staff him. So is anybody else a fan of it's been a while now, but the show The West Wing, about the president, right? So they used to occasionally have these scenes where they would follow the Jed Bartlett, and they would have one of his staffers who were walking along with him and telling him what was next, what room they were going into, who was there. And this was like David, and so you would go, we would go to a market, and we would have 8 visits, all within the arena, and with different things, completely diverse, and my job would be to kind of whisper in his ear and say, here's who we're going to see, here's the 3 things you need to know, like on the fly, and then he'd walk into the room and he'd nail it. So anyway, it was all work ethic with him. This is the guy that dragged me to the NBA. His name is Scott O'Neill. Scott, he left the NBA. He was the CEO of Madison Square Garden when they did the big renovation, and he's currently running the Philadelphia 76ers, the New Jersey Devils, and an English football team in London called Crystal Palace. So their ownership group has all 3. Scott's a great executive, and the thing I learned from him was the value of hiring great people. He used to call it hiring A's. And so while he's a very bright and talented guy, he was never threatened by hiring really good people, and he was always hungry to find the best people and a real diversity on his leadership team. And it was also the value of putting together a great team that had a shared purpose, and everybody knew what the purpose was, and shared goals. We all had our own goals, but he was great about making sure that we had goals in common. And then the final thing about Scott is he was unashamedly wanting to be great. Didn't apologize. We're going to do something great, or you don't want to be part of our team. So he was a real influence. This is my current boss. This is Ferran Soriano. Ferran is the group CEO of that whole matrix that I showed you. Really interesting guy. Previously, he has been the CEO of FC Barcelona, which is kind of a big soccer club in the world. He did that from 2003 to 2008, but his background is really in fast-moving consumer goods, telecom, professional consulting, and airlines. So he's a really interesting upline because he has all these other industries. And what I've learned from him is the value of having a big vision. Nobody else in the world is doing what we're doing in the sport of soccer, and it's just because he thinks it's relevant and that it's going to allow us to challenge the legacy teams much better. And that's the second lesson, which is not being afraid to challenge the norms of whatever category you're in. And I've picked this up from Ferran, and it's a really valuable mindset to have. And then there's Art Savage. So this is unfortunately the late Art Savage, and he was the owner of Sacramento when I moved out there. And Art was the guy who finally got baseball to Sacramento. So there was so much political infighting, they couldn't figure out how to get a team. This city was just dying in the natural for baseball, and he was able to get it done. And what I learned from him is the power of belief and of courage, having the courage to make some big decisions. He ultimately decided not to work out a lease deal with the city, and we just had a mortgage. We had a really big mortgage payment before we put any pennies in the bank and started operating. And he had the belief that we could make it work. And it was a lot of pressure on me to go out and do really big deals because we had to cover that mortgage payment, but it worked out really well. And the other thing I learned from Art is knowing what you enjoy. And what he really loved is he loved doing deals. So for him, it was the art of that deal and then the next deal. And he wasn't that bothered about operating. But he knew that, and so he surrounded himself with people who complemented the things that he enjoyed and that he was good at. And I've taken that lesson from him along the way. And let me finish with these guys. So let's bring it back to Lansing. Best mentors, definitely the best. Tom Dixon and Sherry Myers, and I tell people all the time, were just transformational for me in terms of just being able to step up my game, and they are definitely the reason behind this amazing longevity of the Lugnuts. It's not to be taken for granted that a team can consistently over a 20-year period continue to do what it's done, as well as to find a way to repartner with the city to refresh and to renovate. And I put it all down to these two. I think if you ask Tom his secret to success, he would tell you it's common sense. I try to exercise common sense, which I think is actually a really good lesson, which is, he kind of keeps it simple and he tries not to overcomplicate. He is absolutely the best marketer I've ever worked with, most strategic marketer I've ever worked with, but he really focuses on common sense. And then the two of them, what they actually did is they brought an outside perspective to baseball and to minor league baseball. And the executives at the time around the Midwest League and minor league baseball, they were not really interested in what the two of them had to say and challenging the norms, but it's definitely showed me the value of balancing your team out with people who are industry vets and know how to operate, as well as people who just bring in a completely fresh idea. And we do that in our organization right now, whether it's our media business or anything else. Let me Let me close on soccer in the United States. There are 120 million Americans who describe themselves as a soccer fan. That's in a World Cup year. And in a regular year, there are 60 million Americans who follow league football. And I think it's going to be an exciting year coming up with Christian Pulisic for the men's team. This is a 19-year-old boy who's playing over in Germany, who's the new talisman of the U.S. team. But it's undeniable that soccer is on the rise in the United States. It's the biggest soccer economy in the world, and there are a number of leagues that are thriving. The Premier League is one of them, and we have a great partner in NBC Sports.
In August 2013, the NBC Sports Group became the exclusive home of the Premier League in the United States.
Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca Lowe and welcome to Premier League Live. It's a big day for everyone here. We will be your home for exclusive coverage of the Barclays Premier League.
The mission: to provide the Premier League, its teams, its players and its fans with the biggest and broadest programming and promotion commitment ever in America. Immediately, the promise was fulfilled. Offering all 380 matches each season on television or online, making more matches available on US television than across the pond, and rolling out the biggest marketing campaign ever in America, including the creation of a certain someone who built up quite the buzz.
Football's football no matter where you play it. You got grass, you got cleats, and you got helmets with masks on.
Circle them up, have them put on their pads, and let's start playing for real. They're wearing their pads, Coach.
We have to get Jason Sudeikis back. He's hilarious. But this is a funny campaign. They've been transformational. If you're a soccer fan, breakfast to lunch on Saturdays and Sunday mornings on NBC. Every game is on. The coverage is amazing. And that's been a real leg up. But the U.S. League is also doing well. Major League Soccer is on a rise. We're 10 years on from David Beckham coming in. We have amazing broadcasters, ESPN, Fox Sports, Univision, and the ratings and the viewership are going up. But most importantly, it's being driven by clubs. So in New York, we've been very, very lucky. 20,000 season ticket holders, 27,000 average attendance at Yankee Stadium, big stars, and amazing merchandise sales. And MLS is going to continue to grow. There are 11 cities vying for 4 franchises in the next round of expansion. One of them, I'll skip over this. One of them is Detroit. I think that the bid that Tom Gores and Dan have, the Cavaliers Pistons ownership group is amazing and could be an amazing thing in District Detroit. And they have a really good chance. But bringing it back here to Lansing, what Jeremy Sampson is doing with Lansing United is incredibly exciting. I think the future in Lansing is incredibly exciting. They're off to an amazing start. There are options to go up in leagues to the Professional Development League or the USL, which is the next league after, or the league feeding right into Major League Soccer. And there's no doubt in my mind that that can work here in a great way in Lansing, Michigan. And it's great to see the Spartans doing so well. Right, so the men's and women are winning. The men won again last night. They're not letting goals in. They're ranked 6th in the country. So really exciting. The whole ecosystem here, and the Capital Area Soccer League has a huge participation base, and have just done something amazing over at Beacon Field, which I'm going to go see tomorrow. So I think that the future for the U.S. as well as in Lansing is extremely bright for the sport of soccer. It's just a matter of time until it overtakes ice hockey and moves on to challenge baseball, basketball, and the NFL in terms of positioning as a league. But it's already the biggest economy for the sport of soccer in the world. And so it's really, really, really exciting times. I'm going to pause there and I just say thank you. I'm really grateful to have the time together with all of you. I'm so happy to be back in Lansing. I hope that what I've said has been interesting and helps you understand why I've continued to be passionate and enjoy this great profession of sports, and why Lansing has been such an important part of my family's lives and my professional life, and why we're so excited about the growth of the sport of soccer in the United States.